For our next unit, I'm going to review the idea of strategic expansion and strategic planning. So, the way to look at this is to think about strategic planning as something where you might be reinventing your organization, going down a different path of success. And the way to do that is to start to think about the future without any attachments to your current state. So, what possible scenarios might the future look like? And the way good strategic planners think is they'll start with uh, ideas that are so far down the road in time that it would be almost impossible to know what can happen. So this would be an example of what will the world look like in 10 years? What environment will we be a part of, and what's it going to look like, and what are potential futures? Because there's not just going to be one. You're brainstorming. There may be multiple versions of the future. So in terms of strategic expansion, it starts with where do we think we might be headed down the road? And then within that, how do we succeed to present our organizational aspiration to show how we will be a player, in those potential futures? Once we get there, we start to analyze, are there similarities across the various futures? A place where we could, play a specific role that could lead to success uh, regardless of how things play out. That's when we start to take that aspiration or future thought process and start to think about it more strategically and more tactically in terms of our things that we need to build within the organization. And that would tend to be something you would be building over the shorter term. Call that a 3-year plan, if you will. A strategic plan usually is measured, longest possibility, longest term would be 3 years. And then from that 3-year plan to break the building of that plan down into smaller increments. So what is our today plan? What's our 1-year action plan? And then who owns what, and what steps will we agree to move forward with? In terms of aspiration-based planning, that 10-year idea, when you're describing the future environment, you can start to ask questions like, what's the workforce going to be? Is it going to be the same size? Is it going to be bigger? Is it going to be smaller? What kind of management systems might be required in the various futures? What might technology look like? And this is where you can get very creative about what might happen. What will organizational structures look like? Will there be organizational structures? Will it be totally virtual? What products and services might be needed in those distant futures? And just to kind of think through what is the general picture of what might happen and what role we might play. So that would be in terms of the 10-3-1 idea. This is the beginning. This is the 10. Good to take on some form of history as well. So it's good to know, take a look backwards as well and say what has happened in the past, and then look at the current environment and look at what the future might be, and sort of start to create the picture of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and really kind of paint the road map that says that we can be actually a part of the past and the future. In the 3-year plan, we start to think about what are the core capabilities that we need to have in our organization to be successful in any future that we can imagine at this point in time. A capability. What must we be best in class at, in terms of best in class service, best in class economics? What are those things? It could be a service capability. It could be any number of things. Cost reduction, or expense management could be a capability. Product development could capability. Then we start to think about what is a capability. We need to define what it is and then break it down into the sub-processes that together combined create that capability. So for example, a service capability may have a customer component, it may have a technology component, it may have a lot of different aspects of it, certain procedures and policies, etc. In addition to the processes that need to be defined, there's also how do humans behave within those processes. We would call that the competencies. What are the skills, the behaviors that make up what people need to do within the processes that make the capability world class. Measuring the capabilities and the systems that we're building, it's good to have some ways to benchmark and say, how are we doing against our core capabilities? Are we succeeding? Are we performing up to the levels that we need to? This is probably the single most important part of strategic planning, is this idea of building core capabilities and knowing what they are. And then to be able to sort of state over time, how are we doing against this 3-year plan? What are any gaps and barriers that we have, as we move through our plan in terms of achieving our core capabilities? And maybe we need to adjust our steps along the way. The action steps really are what most people would call their current goals. So your action plan. So within your core capabilities, and you start to break down how each function, each division, each department plays a role in the building of these capabilities, and what are they going to do over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, in terms of collectively as an organization leading to building these organizational capabilities. And over time, where are we falling short? Do we have to make additional investments? And those are things that are always revisited in a strategic plan. The next thing is to think about is strategic planning can get very abstract, if you will, especially if you're a manager who's very operational. So it's important for the architects of the strategic plan to see things through the lens of breakthrough. What are the things, the near and clear things that we can do right now that makes it very, very clear for people to be able to act accordingly. If they can't see it, they can't be it, right? So you have to be the opposite of that. You have to, they have to be able, if you can see it, if you can be it, then you can be it. So breaking your strategic plan down to simple, bite-size pieces is very, very important. And I'll be able to show you, a few examples about, what that means. Let me just go to a document here. So, very simply speaking, what does a breakthrough plan look like? So, very simply, it could be just as simple as this document that you see right in front of us, right here. Where are we headed? So, a statement then says, what is our end point, our point of arrival, POA, point of arrival? What is the breakthrough that we must make towards achieving that point of arrival? Who's accountable? What's the time frame? To get some clarity around that. And this is actually quite important. This is what people generally respond to, is the specific tasks that they need to do. They may not understand the whole plan, but they certainly can understand their specific accountability and how they're contributing to the plan. And I'll show you another very simple document which might help people know where we're headed. So it's good to sort of you've already done this past versus future sort of strategic idea, but how do you bring that to down to the levels where people can understand it. And you do that by creating from to statements. We're moving from this to this, from manual folders to automated folders, something that's that clear and that tactical that everybody knows what you're talking about and can actually articulate it in a consistent way across the organization. I'm going to stop right here now and at this moment, and we'll go into the further discussions inside the class conversations at this point.